Hi, welcome to the Best Life, Best Death podcast. I'm Diane Hullett. You can find out more about the work I do at bestlifebestdeath.com. I've got a special guest here today that I'm very excited about. Brie Smith of Return Home has joined me. Hi, Brie.
Hello, Diane. Thank you for having me today.
I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation because Brie and I are going to talk about something that's sort of new to the field of end of life. At least in my mind, it's new. Brie will tell us a little about the history. So we're talking about human composting, also known as natural organic reduction. Are there other names it goes by, or are those the two main ones?
Yeah, so legally it's known as natural organic reduction. I would say the layman considers it human composting because that is what we're doing here. We call it Terramation because we feel like it fits what already exists in the industry. I come from the funeral industry personally. Over a decade of my life has been given to serving families. So for me, human composting is a little rough. I don't tell families I'm going to go incinerate their loved ones. So, we all as a team kind of decided that earth transformation, terramation, it just kind of came and felt natural, if you will.
I love that. I love that. Like terra of the earth, or like they're now this other thing that we'll talk about another time is aquamation, right? So that's like water, or you're right. We don't use such a rough term. So
yeah.
I love that. So how did you get into this? How did Return Home get into this? Give us a little history.
Yeah, so I received a phone call from the CEO, Micah, who I was actually at my other job on the cemetery grounds at the time. And he said, I've got this crazy thing to show you. And I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I want you to meet me at a warehouse in Auburn. And I want to show you what I'm doing. And fortunately, I had heard Micah's name in the space before. I was actually seeking him to do a presentation for the district that I am the president of for the state association. So I had heard of Mike. I came to the warehouse and it was 4 white walls, and he kind of walked me around and showed me what to expect and where. But what really moved me was at the end, he showed me what had been tested as pig compost, because we did all of our testing on pigs. And I'm a gardener, love plants, kind of obsessive, probably a little bit. And so my first initial instinct was to put my hands in it and then like smell it. And like, cause I'm that girl. So yeah, I did that. I was blown away. It was odorless, or just smelled really mild of like earth and maybe like a mushroom might smell. And seeing that the body and the microbes in the body were really made to transform us back into earth. As somebody who loves physiology and biology, I immediately questioned everything I was doing in that moment and said, why wasn't I doing this before?
Wow, fascinating. It seems like it sort of got going almost maybe 10 years ago as an idea. And then it first became legal in Washington state, and then Colorado and Oregon. Is that right? So it's legal in 3 states. And
yeah.
What's the process? What would one expect if you call Return Home and say, my beloved one just died and I'd like to work with this process? How does it go?
Yeah, so it's important to distinguish the fact that we're all different right now. So, mortuaries work very much the same as in the crematory. It's very similar. The way we embalm is very similar. But every natural organic reduction provider right now is completely different in our science and in how we actually transform the body into soil. So we take a great deal of pride in our ability to serve all 50 states plus Canada. We can, and what we do is we transport people via airlines. That's how people are transported every single day. Actually, you may have even been on a plane where there have been a couple of people. So it's very commonplace, and there's very intense infrastructure there that allows us the ability to unembalmed ship people to Washington state. And then we work out with the family how to return the soil or the compost back to them. Myself and Katie are funeral directors with combined about 25 years of experience. So we have a great deal of knowledge in guiding people through every single step of the process. And we're very high touch. So you can expect a good deal of communication and things moving at a good clip and at your pace and at not maybe a rushed pace compared to what you maybe have experienced with the funeral home previously. So we just try to acknowledge that our process takes anywhere from 60 to 90 days. The body is left to do what it was made to do. And we don't agitate or, push it forward. And we couldn't, even if we wanted to, right? So ultimately we give the family their time too, because we're not in a rush.
Right. Interesting. So the body arrives, and then do you have kind of a space where these, I assume there's some kind of a vessel or a pod, or what do you call it at return home?
We have vessels, and we have a two-phase process. So our vessels are 8 feet by 3.5 feet by 3.5 feet. And when someone arrives in our facility, once we get the proper permitting, we place them in a vessel. And the only thing that's inside the vessel are like oxygen intakes and outputs. We put straw alfalfa and sawdust at about a 3-to-1 ratio to that person's body weight. We place half the organics down. We lay the person right on top of that bed of organics in a compostable garment. We bathe every single person who comes into our care, and we give them a garment to, keep their dignity and keep them covered. And then the rest of the organics go on top of the person, and the vessel is closed and placed in our front of house where people, we are the largest scale with 74 vessels, and also the only facility that's open to the public. So once the person is placed on our vessel racking system, their family can come and see their loved one whenever they want.
Wow, fascinating. And about what's the outcome, 60 to 90 days later? And when you say 60 to 90, does someone check, or is there some kind of technology that's like checking the heat or something? I can imagine, like when you turn a compost pile and you're waiting for it to really hit that vital organic point.
We're very highly monitored by the state of Washington. So that's the good news, is that we are required to have, there's expectations put on us. And what we have is very, very dialed science that is constantly monitored. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we can monitor the oxygen, the temperature, and the airflow, and the water and moisture level that are inside of each individual vessel, and we can see them individually. So that was really important to our process specifically, was that everything is done separately. And so we can really monitor each individual and let their body go at the rate that it would go in nature, but just in an accelerated place.
Right. Because I can imagine when you say that, sure, different sizes, different compositions, like everyone would be a little different. And Correct. Then at the end, what's the outcome? What does
about 500 pounds?
What comes out, and what do you do with it?
Yeah. So we end up with about 500 pounds of very fine, beautiful, like I said, odorless, usable compost. Essentially, that's what moves me the most about what we do. Is I was so used to either with a burial not returning anything to a family, or with a cremation returning a little box of essentially ground bone, which is exactly what it is actually, but it's charred carbon, and I'm just returning this, and I'm not asking why. What's amazing is we end up with about 500 pounds. The family can take as much as they want, and then if they don't and have space in their more urban environment, maybe we have a greenbelt location that's just a 10-minute drive north of our facility to keep our footprint real low, and we can scatter their loved ones on that greenbelt that can never be developed upon in perpetuity. So it is a place that we cleared of a lot of junk and garbage and a couple abandoned vehicles. And now we cleaned and are scattering people there to revitalize the local flora in that area. And what we find with families is when we do return the compost to the family, one of their first reactions is to like hug, because we give them in little burlap bags. So they'll like hug the burlap and like love on it. Or I've had people just take the, little twine that we have around it, just rip it off. And they actually like put their hands inside of the soil and like smell it and do what I did And so that tells me that there's something really innate and really, it's something that hasn't really ever been offered in a way that it's tangible, because we love green burial too here. It's a wonderful disposition method, and actually my preferred before I started here. I'm a green burial girl, and I would just say that seeing people be able to like run their hands through their loved ones' terramated remains is just so moving, and the
So,
tangibility is
yeah,
meaningful.
so tactile. Like I can see, like you said, the smell and the feel and the real sense. And so even bones, like even a big bone, like the femur or something, will turn to the soil in that amount of time.
So what we do is in our facility, we have, like I said, separate stations. So we don't, mess with the body at all in the initial stage. But what happens is there's a screening stage that happens between phase 1 and phase 2, where that person has completely transformed into soil, but their bone remains the same way it does after a cremation.
Or after a green burial. Yeah.
Exactly. So what we do is we have an area in our facility where experienced crematory operators like myself and Katie and Chris, we upend the vessel. We take any inorganics out. So that would be, stents and replacements and screws and things like that, silicone that exist in the body. So we remove all of those things, and those get recycled as much as can be. And then we, at that time, break the bone down very similarly to how they do in cremation. And what happens is because that bone, it almost comes out fluffy. And what that does is it's porous, and it exposes the microbes to the inside of the bone, which is porous and consumable. And so over the second phase, which is about a 30-day resting or curing for that compost, the microbes are able to consume the bone, and we end up with something that's completely, just integrated and
Into the
seamless.
whole thing. Wow, fascinating. This is so fascinating to me, and I wonder what do people love about it? I mean, you talked about the tactile quality and the sense of smell and the sense of returning to the earth. Why do people choose this?
I think at the beginning, when we talk to people, a lot of them have a lot of hesitation toward embalming. That's something we find very frequently. I'm a licensed embalmer, and I've been embalming people for a very long time. And I actually understand why people feel that way. And there's a reason I didn't want to be embalmed. I think there's that. I think there's the idea that some people really don't like fire, quite frankly. They don't like the idea of their body being present in one moment, and then over the course of 2 hours being completely ash. It's really kind of a volatile environment, quite frankly. As somebody in the Northwest, we have about a 90% cremation rate. And I was a crematory operator very regularly. And so I have a ton of experience and can attest to its abrasiveness. And I think people are very drawn to how gentle our process is, because we just lay the person in the vessel, and then we do have an external rotator. So a couple weeks into the process, we begin weekly rotations of the vessel, but we just let the body do its thing, and it's not constantly agitated, and it's just resting.
Right.
And that's appealing to some people.
So incredible. What is the cost? Like, how does the cost compare? Is it less or more?
Yeah, we cost $5,000, $4,950 to be exact. And what we do is, depending on where the person passes away, we work with local funeral homes or funeral service providers. And we always try to adjust our pricing to help the family accommodate additional charges. So, what we do is, if they pass away in Washington state, it's that amount within 75 miles of our facility. And then we charge per loaded mile if they're outside of that 75 miles. And then if they have to be shipped, we work with the local funeral home and with the family, and our fees for receiving, a lot of funeral homes have forwarding and receiving fees are included in our Terramation. So we try to make it as easy on the family as possible.
Yeah.
And then the shipping fees for like the terramated remains afterwards are just their own kind of animal, but you can find it all on our website at www.returnhome.com.
Fabulous. For more info. How does this, coordinate with a service? If a family wants this process, the person who's dying says, this is what I choose, and the family's on board, everybody says yes. how does this coordinate with a service? I mean, I can see if you live in your area, it might be easy, but are there creative ways people have memorialized a service? Done a memorial
Yeah.
service might be the better term.
Well, because we're the only facility open to the public, we take a great deal of pride in being able to have people come visit and see their loved one in the vessel. I'm doing a laying in ceremony this afternoon with a family, and we have a lot of families take us up on it because they get the opportunity to come in, and inside the vessel, we can put anything organic, anything like plants or flowers, or, we had a family bring in a bottle of Bailey's the other day, and they like poured Bailey's in there because their mom loved Bailey's. Or, I've had people bring in a cake that was frozen for like 40 years from their wedding, and they laid that in there. So if it's ingestible or compostable, essentially it can go in the vessel with their loved one. And then we also, because you can see our vessels, give people the opportunity to decorate the outside of the vessel so that when they visit again, they can identify which vessel is their loved one's. And right now we have 2 veterans who have flags draped over their vessels. So we see memorialization in different ways. We're also high touch in the way that we encourage people at the beginning to be involved throughout the process. So we give everybody a bath. And that means if you want to be present while we give your mother a bath, or you want to give your mother a bath and just have us be kind of helping you and present, we want you to have that ability. If you want to bring your loved one, a family we worked with drove their son from California because he had never been on a plane before. And she couldn't bear to put him on a plane for the first time. He was afraid of it. She didn't want to do that. So his mother drove him from California. So it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
We see these beautiful memorialization, but it's more than that. It's more than just a service. It's really taking people by the hand and guiding them through their grief, and them at the end of our process being able to see new life be given by their loved one, and continuing that circle of life in the way that they see new growth.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. Just that it is a full circle process that you're offering on every level. It's kind of a traditional funeral home with a different outcome for the body, just a very different approach. I wonder if anyone will say, well, we want to do this for my loved one, and then we want to take that dirt and put it at a cemetery with a headstone. I wonder if anybody will ultimately do that. You have.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
We actually are coordinating it right now. And so, there's still a way for people to have that space if they want it. And just between you and I, as somebody who's done extensive research on the subject, we're not really running out of space to put people. That's kind of, we've got a lot of earth still left, but what's the problem is there's no organic matter being returned to the earth unless you're choosing that green burial. So there is earth. It's just organic matter needs to be placed back into the earth. And so we have an idea at some point to have a scattering garden. Right now, our memorial park is not manned. There's not people there regularly, so we can't invite families there. And it also can never be developed upon. So there's no restrooms or, walkways. But we have the idea of like a scattering garden at some point with rocks or something that can still hold a place for people, because a lot of people want a place to go. So
absolutely. I could totally see this evolving into kind of a space and a place and a park that's a managed park, but with very different fees and very different management than a traditional cemetery. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. And I see a whole bunch of wonderful, sustainable things in our future. So Return Home's excited to be a green funeral home and expand what that means as far as, we offer Terramation, and that's what we specialize in. But I'd love to also have the ability just to place someone in a shroud in the ground. So we have a lot coming.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Brie. I think this has been so informative for listeners. It's something we read about, and it's a little bit of a sensational headline, I think, when people put it out, but and the lay term body composting, how do you kind of make that shift to seeing this as really terramation or natural organic reduction, these terms that, as you said, aren't quite so, I don't know, raw in some ways. So I really appreciate this discussion. You can find out more about Brie at Brie's work, the work of Return Home, at returnhome.com. They are based up near Seattle in Washington State. And as she said, they're available for people who live anywhere. So pretty incredible. Thanks, Brie, for joining me.
Thank you, Diane. It was such an honor to be here, and I'll come back anytime. So
Wonderful. I think we've got lots to talk about, and I'd love to kind of see where this is in another year or two.
us too. We're excited.
Thanks again. I'm Diane Hullett, and you've been listening to the Best Life, Best Death podcast. Thanks for joining me.